What if Cam Spencer got that extra year? You're locked on.
You are Locked On Yukon, your daily podcast on the Yukon Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right. Welcome to the program. Thanks for making Locked On Yukon your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at Nissan.com. We have a packed show today. We'll discuss some of these what-ifs. The big one that we teased was, what if Cam Spencer got his waiver accepted and could play next year? Our transfer portal wish lists, and senior day festivities. We have our first guest ever on Locked On Yukon. Let me introduce our student correspondent embedded on the Stores campus, Kyle Bergstrom. Welcome, man.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome, man. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where people can find you. Obviously, they can see it on Twitter there or X. And just give me a quick overview of your time at UConn. What are you studying? Like, that's a great question. Like, what are you there for?
Like right now, I'm a sophomore at UConn. Grew up in Connecticut. Right now, I'm still undecided at UConn. Still trying to figure out what I want to do. Kind of leading towards communications, maybe economics a little bit, that sort of path. But yeah,
I love it, man. Well, I messaged you last night about coming on and doing a couple of segments with us, and this could be a pretty regular thing. I'd love to have you. For everyone that listens to this, Kyle has sent me some really great video. I don't know if we'll get to some of this stuff today, but I think I'm going to post some of the senior day festivities he had on our Twitter account on you can at that at Locked On Yukon on X, and then at Mark Zanetto CBB on X, just to kind of get some perspective of what the students are, being a student that is camped out at games, like going through that whole experience. Kyle's been pretty instrumental in all of that. The first thing we're going to talk about is, I don't know if you saw the article. It's on ConnecticutInsider.com. Mike Anthony, thank you for that wonderful article on Cam Spencer and how Dan Hurley are just a perfect match. But inside that article, he dropped this nugget of Cam only played 5 games at Loyola as a sophomore. He recently applied for a waiver to play next year. It's not unprecedented to get a waiver overturned, but it was denied. He appealed, it was denied. So he will not be back next year. But what if? What would be the students' reaction if Cam Spencer was on campus next year?
Well, I know for one thing, like all the students love Cam Spencer. Like the energy he brings, like he fires up the crowd. Like I know for a fact that all the students, like they all like love Cam Spencer, the energy he brings, like even his shooting, his playing too. Like he's one of the hardest playing guys on the court at all the times. So yeah, I mean, if he came back for another year, the students would be ecstatic about it for sure.
Yeah, I also think, like, maybe you tell me, because I don't know if you have classes with these guys. I'm sure you see them on campus from time to time. Like, who do you have classes with? Just curious.
Last year I had class with Caravan, actually. That's my only one. I don't have any classes with them this year. But like you do see them around campus sometimes, and it's pretty cool to just see them like walking around. Like at the end of the day, they're just students too, and they're doing their thing. So it's pretty cool to just see them walking around,
What I mean, I went to, for no one that knows, I went to Sacred Heart a long time ago, and this was the year that UConn won their first national championship. I was a senior in high school, and then the next year I went to Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart played defending champion UConn that same year because it was their first year in Division I basketball. So, and we had some big guys on our team, but they weren't kind of the celebrities that like a UConn program has. You're right. They're just students. But is it weird? I don't know how tall you are. I'm an average size guy. I'm 5'10". Do you see, like, when you see a guy like Klingon walking around?
For Klingon especially, it's different because he's like 7'2", 7'3". You see him from a mile away. So like obviously it's like who they are when you walk by. You kind of like feel the presence of like who they are, kind of in a way.
Sure.
But yeah, you see them coming from. They always have like the UConn gear on too in the backpack, so you know who they are.
For sure. I think that's a staple for any program, whether it's basketball or football. That's pretty cool. I believe actually, if we're gonna play this what if game, let's say Cam is coming back next year, I think it's the ripple effect is I think Alex Caravan stays because one, I don't know if he's going to get the NBA grade that he wants because I know there's a lot of, I think there's some holes in his game. He's a great player. I love him. I'm just saying for the next level. But I think that there's maybe some stigma that he doesn't create his own shot. So again, I think he would stay because he has another kind of running mate to help kind of offset. I think Hassan Diarra stays without question. I think he may stay anyway. But what else? Do you think there's more of a ripple effect there? Do you think maybe less players would consider even transferring out? Because we haven't even talked about that.
I do. I think the team's kind of like around Cam, like you started with Cam Spencer and Dan Hurley. That relationship is like perfect for one another. I think the team like feeds off that energy. They like feel like he has that energy and they bring that energy together. So it's kind of like a ripple effect. The rest of the team starts playing better. The energy's up.
Sure. And also, like, when you look at the game against Seton Hall, he scored 5 points, but his impact was they put so much attention on him from the start. They were like, we're not letting Cam score. I think Davis guarded him like face to face throughout the whole game. The guy's taller, quicker than him. He really couldn't get open. They made life miserable for him. But he didn't force any shots. He is the epitome of take what's given. And I love that. So I think for me, so we feel like Alex would stay, Hassan would stay. I have a sneaking suspicion we may lose someone. I don't want to put names out there because I don't want someone to be like, well, no one told me that. But I think as time goes on, you kind of start to actually I'll pose that question to you. Of all the freshmen, do you feel like there's anyone, just gut feeling? You don't know anything. You're not an insider. I get that.
Yep.
But just gut feeling of all the freshmen, like of the 5 that came in, right? Do you think outside of Castle, we know he's going to go.
He's going to go.
Do you think anybody tests the transfer portal waters?
I don't think so. I think there's a chemistry within this team, and I think everyone's like all in on UConn and all in on what they're trying to build here. I think they know their time's coming as long as they stay within the program, keep listening to what Hurley has them doing in practice. They know their time's coming and they'll get their shot.
I like it. I do think that, though, when you get these used car salesmen like Rick Pitino, they come in and say, well, you could have a bigger role on our team like he did with Naheem Aleem, and that just wasn't true. So, once you make that decision, there's no, takebacks, right? So I think for me, I think we lose one guy. I don't know who it is. I have no knowledge of it, but someone's going to promise them minutes, right? You're going to be a big time player on our program. You're going to bring all that championship pedigree here, all that BS that coach speak. Right. And that's going to be, I think, the challenge for Hurley. I'll ask you one more question before we get to our second segment. What do you think, if you had to, I know this is terrible, if you had to lose one of the assistant coaches,
they're all great.
Luke or Kamani, who do you feel, who could you part with? You don't want to lose either, but if you had to.
That's
putting you on the spot.
Yeah, you are putting me on the spot. I don't want to talk bad about either of them.
No, you're not. You're not talking bad about either.
Great coaches.
Absolutely.
If we had to lose one, probably Luke Murray. Just because Kamani Young just seems to be a little closer to Dan Hurley. He knows, he's the associate head coach, so he's closer to what Dan's doing. He's running practice more. He's more involved with things than Luke Murray might be. So I would just stick with Kamani.
Yeah, I think both are going to get offers, and I think we could lose both, which sucks. But I agree. I think Kamani does, and I don't know this, but I'm pretty positive he does a lot more of the recruiting aspect of things too. And God, I don't want to lose Luke Murray because I don't want Bill Murray to not go to our game.
It's great having Bill Murray in the stands.
So, but we'll talk about our senior day festivities right after this. Right. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue, perfect for city drives and great escapes. Gone are days of connecting your phone, Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play. all with a 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder with room up to 8, an expansive cargo, advanced availability of 4x4 capability with a 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. The Pathfinder is there to answer the call. All right. And speaking of answering the call, you were at senior day. You are at every game, essentially, right?
Yeah, pretty much every game. Sure.
Tell me about the mood inside stores, inside Gamble, and what was the atmosphere like, man?
The atmosphere was one of the best all seasons in Gamble, for sure. Like even during the senior night thing, it was super cool. They all 4 players got honored at half court. I mean, and then during the game, it was super electric. But like the whole crowd was into it. Everybody was chanting together. It was honestly one of the first times, besides the big red Yukon chant, that everyone's been in unison, all chanting together at one time. And I think the players fed off of it. It was great. And then Andrew Hurley came in at the end of the game. I think we all saw, and hit the free throw. It was the loudest Gamble I've probably ever heard in a very long time when he hit that free throw.
Do you know? Have you ever interacted with Andrew?
Actually, yeah, I did at Ted's after the game.
Recently?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah, I said I was. I'd walked into Ted's, and right behind me, here comes Coach Hurley, and then I turn around and there's Andrew right there. So I talked to him for a minute or two. It's pretty cool.
That's cool. What do you think about? Did your dad ever coach you in any sports?
No, he never did.
What do you think that would be like?
I think it's got to be pretty cool, especially at this level.
Yeah.
To have that connection, like he gets to be with he gets to be with his dad all day and work. He gets to work out with them and see what it's like. It must be awesome for him too.
Yeah, I think he thinks that coaching will probably be in his future at some point. 100%. At the minimum, it just has to be, like you said, it has to be so cool to have your dad be in that position and then, kind of be on this ride, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty cool thing. What else from senior day? Like, what about some other students that you sat with? Like, are they the guys that you go with all the time, or you can give some shout outs to some of your
yeah. So my buddy, shout out Kyle Bergstrom. I was sitting with him the whole time. I sit with him in most of the games. We do a lot of the campouts together. And then I have a few other of the buddies that I always sit with. And then down in the other side of the front row, a couple more of my good friends that are always at the campouts as well. And I know them. They were super pumped. Everyone was jumping up and down. It was great.
Absolutely. Tell me about the campouts. I know we did a little bit of that in the last show where we showed you on the scooter. Like, what are some crazy things that you can share on a podcast that have happened at some of these campouts?
Well, I mean, it's just, for the college game day, which was, I think it was your first episode you did. Mm-hmm. There were so many people. There were probably like 40 or 50 people there. Intense overnight. There was cornhole. There was like, we were tossing a football around. There was music going. It was great. Everyone was in a great mood. It was a really fun night.
That's awesome, man.
All the other campouts, like during the day, we'll get there super early. Me and my buddy Mike, shout out Mike. We normally go super early, around 5:30, 6 o'clock most times. And then whenever the game starts, we'll just wait out there the whole day. And then more people will come in line as the day begins. But normally it's the same group of guys that are camping out super early. So we kind of got to know each other and build friendships off that. It's awesome.
What is UConn basketball and just UConn in general meant to you? And like, we found out through kind of interactions on Twitter that we're kind of connected in a really weird way. Like, right. Yeah. You said I think one of your parents, your mom went to Maloney in Meriden, where I'm from. And that was not planned. That was just random, right?
Yeah. Very random.
Can you explain, like, I think one of the things that we want to do with this show is it kind of really kind of explain to people what UConn means to Connecticut as a whole. There are some other colleges, like, where I live now, a lot of great basketball in North Carolina, Duke, but Duke still, right? What does UConn mean to Connecticut as a whole?
I know I know it's super big to the entire state. Like, if you go to any of the XL games, like downtown Hartford is just packed right before the games, all the restaurants, all the bars. And whenever you come up here to gamble, and whenever the team's winning, the state's happy. Celebrations are going on. Whenever you lose, everyone here is miserable. So, and it's a different feeling when UConn loses around here. So,
do you agree with Richard Hamilton? I always go Rich because I want to say Rip Hamilton, when he said that when he came to UConn, I think Calhoun said to him, it'll have a feeling of you're playing in a pro town because we're the only game in town. Do you feel like that's kind of the sentiment all around that?
Yeah, especially at UConn. I know UConn basketball itself for the student body is one of the biggest like things to do, like weeknights, like especially during the winter season. Like that's what a lot of students look forward to. And I know a lot of people around Connecticut as well. Like they love coming out to the games. They love going to them. So
that's great, man. What's been your favorite? I know you've only been at school for 2 years. What's been your favorite UConn basketball moment that you've witnessed? You know, I don't know if you went to the Final Four or any of that stuff. That would obviously be up there, but like on campus or at the XL Center, what's your number one? Or even give me like what's your top like 2 or 3 moments?
Well, my number one, I was actually at the Final Four, and then
wow, okay,
was yeah. So I was down in Houston last year. That's got to be my favorite memory of all time. Watching both of those games, watching the confetti fall on the court after, super cool. One of the greatest moments of my life. 2 and 3, I'm gonna have to go Marquette game this year.
Okay,
it was amazing in the XL. The XL was packed, the stripe out. When they turn the lights off too for the UConn chant, it's amazing in there. And then number 3, I'm gonna have to go. I wasn't a student at UConn yet, but I was at the game. It was 2022, I believe, the UConn Villanova in XL Center, where RJ Cole hit the buzzer beater.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Dan Hurley was thrown out of that game. I remember that. That was one of my favorite. That's got to be one of my favorite UConn games of all time.
Yeah, he got teed up because he got a technical initially, and then he fired.
And then he was hyping up the crowd, and they threw him out for that. Yep,
that's amazing.
Yeah. It was,
Dan Hurley is a certified.
That was a really fun game.
Yeah, Dan Hurley is a certified psycho, and I mean that in the absolute best way. He is
100%. He's the best.
Absolute best.
Yep.
So one of the things I've asked you to do is kind of do some videos and stuff. And even though we're not going to show a ton of that stuff today, what have you kind of learned a little bit from just doing some of this vlogging or whatever? Like, you know, what have you learned about that you didn't already know about UConn? Is there anything that you can share with us?
Not really. Everything that I kind of like video that I send to you is stuff that like most of the students do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really do anything special. I mean, most people call me crazy for going out there overnight, staying out there for 12, 13 hours sometimes. But
what's the cold? Wait, hold on. Let's pause there. What's the coldest it's been on a day?
It was definitely last year for the Xavier game.
Okay.
That was my longest like camp out without staying overnight. It was 13 hours, over 13 hours. And I think it was under 10 degrees the whole day.
Did you bring like a space heater or something like that?
No, I only had a coat on. It was terrible. Me and my buddy Chris were out there the whole time. And the wind up here at UConn is also terrible. So it like takes another 10 degrees off that. So it was freezing. Couldn't feel any part of my body.
I can't even listen. You get to hear how soft I am by saying, "Did you have a space heater?" Where would you plug it in?
They brought a space heater one of the campouts. It was like a little propane one. They screwed it to it, and that was giving off a little heat, but yeah, nothing much other than that.
That's wild, man. It's one of. I've had this conversation with some people in the past. It's one of the things that I regret about my college experience is not going the route of a UConn because it was kind of like what I wanted anyway, and I went in a different direction. Mm-hmm. Probably just stupid at the time, but great for my time at Sacred Heart. Can't take anything away from me. But yeah, I would probably be a crazy man like you camping out and not caring about the cold. But that's such a cool experience. Well, before we still have a little bit more left in the show. Before we get into it, let's talk about what our transfer portal wish lists are going to be, and we'll do so right after this. This segment is brought to you by FanDuel. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all of your favorite NBA players in teams with quick bets, live, same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right. So let's talk about transfer portal wish lists. We had a conversation last night about you grab two, I grab two. Why don't you go first? Who's your first transfer portal wish list player?
It would have to be Danny Wolf, the sophomore from Yale. Big 7-footer. He's 250 pounds. He shoots 34% from three. Most likely, with the absence of Klingon, probably going to the draft.
Yep.
We're going to need a spot to fill in that 7-foot slot. I mean, we're still going to have Sampson for another year, most likely. But he's not 7 foot. We're going to lose a lot of the defensive depth that we have with Klingon on the floor. Without a 7-footer out there, he has 37 blocks on the year this year. So with Klingon going out and him potentially coming in, we may not have a drop off at that spot. And then,
no, that's great. Do you have? So he's 7 foot. I've seen a little bit of him. I think there's been some people on Twitter that have kind of put him on the UConn transfer radar, if you will, right? I think he's on a lot of people's wish list. So no argument there. For me, my first guy is a player out of Western Carolina. And I have a friend right now who, if he watches this, is probably going to lose his mind because he's a Western Carolina grad. But it's Vontarius Woolbright. He is likely going to be the SoCon player of the year. He averages 21.2 points in 12.6 rebounds at 6'6" as a guard. I get it, in the league that is not as big as the Big East. It's a mid-major. It's usually about the 10th or 11th ranked conference in the country. So it's not the dregs of the lows of the NCAA as you would think. A lot of great players that come out of the SoCon, none other than Steph Curry, one of the greatest shooters of all time. And even someone like Kevin Martin, who was a 20-point NBA scorer, is a Western Carolina grad. So there's some precedent there where this is a school that does get some diamonds in the rough. And he has 1 year of eligibility. I think technically he's a senior, but he's only played 3 full years at Western. It would make a total amount of sense to go to a small school in Carolina, like we did with Tristan Newton in East Carolina, take their best player to add to a championship level team. This kid is all about winning. He averages 21.2 points a game, just kind of out of being so physical. He doesn't shoot threes. He's like 26% from three, kind of what Tristan Newton was before he came to UConn. So he can improve there. But he's a rebounder and a passer. And he kind of is Mr. Triple-Double in that respect. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and there's some symmetry there.
And then, so next transfer, we would, if we needed to, we'll go after. I chose Matt Cross, the senior from UMass. Reason I chose him, number one, UConn is located really close to UMass.
Sure.
And the location difference would not be too much for him. He's 6'7", 230 pounds.
Big kid.
This season, he's averaging 15.6, and he's shooting 33% from three. Last season, in his junior year, he led UMass 6.3 rebounds per game and 12.2 points per game, and he reached double-figure scoring in 16 of his 23 starts. So
solid.
So coming down from UMass down to UConn, I mean, why not?
No, I totally agree. That's another good one. Also a name I've heard. And to me, the last one is a total kind of like throwing a dart at the wall, because I think there's also a thought of you can never have too much depth, especially on the wings. And Scotty Middleton is a former 4-star recruit out of Miami. And he played 1 year at Miami. I think he's originally from Wichita, Kansas. He is now at Ohio State, but he's a freshman. Don't think he's playing a ton. He's averaging like 4 points a game. They're going through a coaching situation where they got rid of, I can't think of his name. He was at Xavier first. They just let go of him. Their coach, they have an interim coach that ended up being Purdue that day. I think everyone remembers that.
Yeah, be Purdue.
Yep. So how can we forget Purdue losing to an interim coach? We cannot. Never a dull moment to take a shot at Purdue. But no. So I think that's a kid, and if it's not him, it's going to be someone like him. 6'7", tons of upside. A good, absolutely multi-positional defensive player. Mm-hmm. I know Dan Hurley has kind of changed his philosophy a little bit, but he really hasn't. Like, he has a standard that he expects from the defensive side, but he also has scorers and capable offensive players. And I think that's where there's the melding of his previous life of being the Rhode Island coach and then initially coming to UConn is no more are we going to grind out games 59-58. We're an offensive machine. We run great offensive sets, but also we're going to play tough defense. And that's just the bottom line. So what are your thoughts about this incoming class? We have Ahmad Noel, who's I think I'm saying that right, who will likely be let's just talk about him for a second, because I know he was at the game on. He
was at Gamble on Sunday. The student section actually gave him a chant. Everyone was chanting his name pregame. It's pretty cool. He stood up and looked over and whatnot. But I've watched some of his game. He's what is he, 6?
I think he's 6'4".
4. I was going to say 6'4". Tough point guard. He can get to the rim. He can shoot the ball. He can do it all.
I think he's going to come in with a little bit of a chip because of this. And if he hears this, I hope he does, because he should have been a McDonald's All-American.
Sure.
He got gypped on not being a 5-star, so he was a 4-star. Very just below the cusp of that. Right, should have been a 5-star. Kind of continue that tradition of Steph coming in here and doing that, and among other 5-star recruits that we've had. And so, but also, I think that's also part of UConn's story, right? We do more with less, and we in terms of what the recruiting is. Right. Duke, Kansas, all the schools that win recruiting championships have them. We don't care. Right. We'll do the playing championships, and we'll hang banners instead of recruiting championships all day, every day.
100%.
Well, listen, Kyle, I really appreciate you coming on, man. Stick with me as I kind of send us out, but it's always a pleasure to talk to you, but also kind of just get an understanding of the student experience there. It's something that it's the only thing with UConn that I didn't experience, right? I've been to Gamble, I've been to what used to be the Hartford Civic Center, now Excel Center, right? And even being a lifelong fan, it's hard to kind of put myself in your shoes because have never been there. So really cool. Really appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last couple words?
I just want to thank you for having me on. It was super cool to be on here, and great conversation today. And looking forward to continuing doing it for you in the future.
For sure, man. And and this is what we call a segue. We're going to segue into Locked On has the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on free Fire TV channel app. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to we're super excited about everyone that listens to Locked On UConn, and it's your first listen every day. If that's the case, we appreciate you. But if you're still interested in watching shows, your second listen of the day should be on Locked On College Basketball. It's a podcast hosted by experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. They run through, I'm sure, a bunch of transfer portal stuff, as we just went through, kind of daily rundown of the games from the week. As we get closer, bracketology, who's in, who's out. This really would love for you guys to check them out as well. This has been a Locked On UConn for Kyle and myself. Peace, love, and Huskies. Go Huskies.
Go Huskies.